friends, welcome to the channel. I am Nicole. I do live here in India and I am with my very good and mostly only friend, Laurence.
Hello.
Laurence is my French connection. She is my bestie from the Westie and she's here today to react to a subscriber recommendation, and this is India banned its own flag.
I had no idea.
Honestly, I don't even know if this really happened. I didn't Google it. I don't do research because I'm American and homework and that type of stuff is hard. I don't do that. But this was a recommendation. I thought I'll look at it. I mean, I'm not sure if it's actually real. Like, did they really do it? Let's find out. Let's see if it's actually based on real history and actually valid. I honestly don't know. So let's take a look. If you haven't already, give me your like, give me your subscribe, and let's go.
Imagine it's 1983. India just won its first Cricket World Cup, so you grab your national flag, scramble flag waving down the street, and then the police shows up and puts you in handcuffs. What just happened? Well, you just did a crime. India might be independent since 1947, but even half a century later, flying the Indian flag by Indians in India was forbidden. Responsible for national flag use limitations are two laws: the Emblems and Names Prevention of Improper Use Act of 1950, cool name, and the Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act of 1971. Emblems Act 1950 says use of certain emblems and names, including the national flag, for commercial purposes without approval not allowed. Meaning you can't sell any, steel beams with a big Indian flag on the steel beam packaging. If you do, you pay a 500 rupee fine. That's $5.78. To be fair, in India 1950, you get a soda and 3 bauxite mines for that. That can't be right. Okay, it's only a measly 2 average annual salaries. Insults Act 1971 says insults to the Indian flag result in a fine of unspecified amount. Could even be 551 rupees. Please, Your Honor, that's too many rupees. Such an insane sum of rupees doesn't even exist. Or up to 3 years in prison. Debit card cool with you? Or a fine of unspecified amount and up to 3 years in prison. And if you do it again, it's at least a year. Your Honor, that's so mid.
I mean, back in the 80s and before that, 70s, 60s, 50s, whatever, 500 rupees.
Yeah, it was quite a lot.
That was a lot of money. I don't know. I mean, they're kind of being sarcastic with the $5.78. But even when I moved to India, 500 was $10. I mean, that was not nothing. I mean, inflation and things have, and the dollar has gotten stronger over the last few years, but certainly back in the 80s and before that, when this was happening, $500 was a lot of money.
But notice anything? Huh? Both laws don't mention anything like general flag use prohibited, and still it was so. But how? Let me introduce the Flag Code of India, a compilation of rules governing who, why, how can do things with the Indian national flag or not. Government directive, not law. Write that down, gonna need it later. In this here flag code, it says in specific, usually flying the flag only on important government buildings allowed. Stop! What's all this? Only allowed on important government buildings. Are you...
Okay, so I'm wondering if they actually did that. Like, did they actually enforce this back in the 80s and 70s and 60s? If you're older, and I do have a bit of an older audience, I'm also an old lady. If you're older and you remember these times, was that actually prohibited? Like, I don't see, I mean, India is so nationalistic and so, like, they have so much pride for their country.
Yeah.
I can't see the police.
Okay, so there are two things here. First of all, I don't like this person, whoever it is. I find him extremely condescending and putting his own bias. Putting his own bias on the whole thing. That's one. the whole thing makes no sense.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, because there are some, like, I understand in terms of like there are crazy laws out there, even in the U.S. Like there are some that have been on the books from like the 20s and 30s or whatever, and like you hear about them and you're like, that is crazy. Like, like,
Yeah, we have some too from Napoleon actually.
yeah.
But
But they're not enforced.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean-
So I'm wondering, could this have been on the books legally? Like it does look like legally this was, on the books, but was it actually enforced at that time? Because I just don't see that would have been the case. But I could be wrong. I wasn't here in the 80s. So if I am, leave a comment. How were the days back then? Were you able to fly a flag? Were you able to have a flag on a t-shirt or some other type of an item? Let us know in the comments.
To an important government building? No. But my father. Ha! Which? Parliament. Ha! My bad. Have a nice day. Only in important government buildings implicitly means flag use generally prohibited, except where explicitly allowed, or national holiday like Independence Day, Republic Day, National Week, or Gandhiji's birthday. That's bad though. Why would you do that? Because you don't trust your people with their national flag. Idea goes, if every person in India is allowed to use the flag insults, intentionally or otherwise, inevitable. One flies it upside down, one lets it lie in the mud, one uses it for underwear. In order for that not to happen, better to massively limit its use in the first place. And not so dumb actually. The fewer people fly the flag, the fewer people can mess it up. Pure mathematics. Also, flag use strictly is regulated much more likely by honorable government officials than by a 6-year-old with a felt tip pen up her nose. My problem with it? That's a rule in the vein of, I don't go out so a piano can't fall on my head. Effective, but maybe a little overkill. Cause what's the goal? Flag insults per year down to 0? Can't do it. For every draconian ban, there's 10 geniuses doing it anyway just because. Flag insults reduced as much as possible? That's more like it. Only don't be surprised when people aren't giving a hoot about the flag anymore. If a political elite are the only ones allowed to use a flag, that's not a national flag anymore. That's a state flag. A flag not for the Indian people, but for those few dudes working the levers. How you gonna identify with that? I don't. You don't.
Okay, I have to agree with that. He makes a point there.
Yeah.
If you reduce it so much, it's no longer a flag for the people. It is a state flag. So I would agree with that.
But if you paid close attention, like a one-armed woodworker, you noticed that I spake in past tense. Use of the flag was forbidden. You were a nice kid with potential. Today, you bring a bag of rubber bands to the park to hunt for pigeons and call it brunch. Damn it! And the Indian national flag, withheld from its population for decades, can today be flown by everyone in the country. A thank you would be in order. Thank you. To whom though? Thanks belong to one single man who wouldn't take it any longer, who was prepared to clash with the whole Indian political elite, equipped only with deep love for his country, a gigantic inheritance, and valuable connections in business and politics. My hero! Main character of our story is Naveen Jindal, son of an Indian industrialist. 1992, Naveen, like every other Indian boy, gets his Master of Business Administration in Dallas, Texas, USA, sees lots of US flags everywhere, and thinks to himself, hey, awesome, why don't we do it like that in India? Comes home and does it like that in India. He flies a huge Indian flag in front of his dad's factory, and everyone's like, oh, who raised that flag? Must be a real patriot. But then, the evil provincial politicians like, that's forbidden, yeah? How can it be forbidden when it feels so right? The flag code... What? How can it be... I heard you. That's hell of a weird thing to say, man. Did you fall into a ditch as a child or something? Take down the flag. No. Take down the flag. I'll call the cops. And then he called the cops. And Naveen had to take the flag down. Big anguish, many pain, but is he gonna give in? No way. Naveen fights for his patriotic ideal and takes on the system all on his own. Dad? The legal fight is drawn out for ages. Government like, we say who can use the flag. And Naveen like, wrong, I have a constitutional right. And government like, spell that for me, would ya? But Naveen was correct. There is such a thing called the Constitution of India, with modest ornamentation. Nice, very classy. Wherein it says, Article 19, 1a, all citizens shall have the right to freedom of speech and expression, and flag flying counts as expression. A thing that's often forgotten though, freedom of expression never absolute. One right can be limited to protect another one. That's why it's not a bad idea to think about stuff before you say it, so you don't get into trouble with the law. That's the thing though, the flag code is no law, never passed through parliament, only the government said, this is the flag code, comma, you're gonna follow it. And that's obviously not above the constitution. Therefore, after years of flag up, flag down, 2004, finally the verdict. Supreme Court says, using the flag is a right of the Indian population. You can't just generally prohibit it. So flag use for the whole population allowed. Oh yeah. And with that, all good. No. What? No. Wanna elaborate on that? No. The flag codes may be not as strict as it once was, but that's still no free play for flag shenanigans. Everyone's allowed to use the flag, but don't you make a mistake, because the Insults Act is waiting just around the corner. And remember, if in violation, up to 3 years in prison and fine. Oh, yeah? And such a mistake is easily made. This is punished. Flag not allowed on clothing below the waist. This is punished. Flag can't touch the ground. And even this is punished. Flag can't include lettering. That's not all though, because Insults Act extremely broadly formulated. Every act in deed, speech or writing that shows disrespect to or brings into contempt the Indian national flag is punished. Strictly speaking, even the disrespectful use of a visual representation of the flag, like the one I've just shown, is punished. Oh, cancel India trip. Now wait a sec. There has to be an overt intention to disrespect the flag for someone to be punished. Unintentionally letting the flag touch the ground for a second never qualifies for that. In theory, that's right. Only reality looks a bit different. The Insults Act lands people in court all the time. Someone flies the flags of India and Palestine next to each other, court case. A Muslim procession uses the Indian flag with prayer verses on it, court case. A cake is cut with the Indian flag on it, even that gets a court case. And even if these things always ended well, which they don't, after that, you most likely won't even want to be in the same room with the Indian flag. Since 2004, all of India can use the national flag. At the same time, even the smallest of slips of flag etiquette can land you in prison. Personally, I wouldn't take that chance.
Okay, so what do you think? So clearly this was a law.
What do I think about the video, or what do I think about the content? I mean, the flag.
Okay, let's center on the flag.
Okay, it's centered on the flag. I understand, but at the same time, the cake, I don't understand how it's an offense.
Like having the Indian flag on the cake.
Yeah, if it's
Because we're gonna cut it and.
But it's if it's.
I'm wondering if that was a real court case.
It probably is,
Probably
but
is. But it was
if-
probably not a small personal cake. It was probably this ginormous cake or something. That
yeah, but if it's the
was served to
15th of
hundreds of
August,
people.
or I don't know, Republic Day, or
Yeah, I get it. Like,
Why
why
not?
would it?
yeah,
Yeah.
how is that?
So I understand.
I know.
I mean, even in the U.S., we have things that you cannot do with the American flag. You are actually not supposed to put it on clothing or make clothing of the American flag. So I do understand that there are some things here that they want to keep close, and they want to make certain that it doesn't start happening with the Indian flag. I am really surprised that it wasn't, recognized until 2004. I think that is a long time. I would really love, again, to hear from people that are older and have a memory of this time and see if it really was something that people were punished for. It was interesting that it was a Jindal that, went ahead and took the case up. I'm glad that he had the resources to do that. And they made fun of him for having an inheritance, but at least he put it to good use in that case. I think though that the flag, I mean, if I'm a foreigner, and you know, it's said here in the video that you know all citizens of India have a right to free speech, and that this being able to use the flag is part of that, and freedom of expression and freedom of speech. I actually don't have that. My rights are not covered under the Indian Constitution, which is fine because I'm an immigrant here. You know, I'm not a citizen. I haven't given up my American citizenship, so I need to follow the rules. And if those are the rules for the Indian flag for everybody, I think that everyone should follow them. Like, I don't have a problem with not having it on clothing. I don't have a problem with not having it on cake.
No, I
Like,
don't have a problem
No, I know.
making
They
them
think
cake.
it's funny
Just-
that they
yeah, I
would,
just
that would be a court
Don't
case.
see how it's an offense.
But
Yeah.
I think that if you are in a position where you're questioning whether or not that it is, you know,
Appropriate.
appropriate, then you should just say no. You know, it's easy as that. And, you know, I would never do something to the Indian flag that would land me up in this trouble. Like, I totally respect the flag, and I respect that there are laws around its usage. I am glad though that those laws have been, you know, opened up drastically since, you know, the 80s, that, you know, that this is the people's flag and that they can use it. This video though was interesting. The sarcasm, some of it was good and some of it was not so good. And
I don't think I liked any of the sarcasm actually.
you didn't.
I don't see why. I mean,
It even had
you want to make a video on something, you make a video on that, but why sarcasm and
I
why?
think they were trying to make it funny. Yeah.
But it
and,
wasn't really. It got on my nerve actually.
maybe it was funny for other people. Maybe just not for
Okay,
us.
sorry,
Sorry.
didn't find it funny.
Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting in regards to the history, but that's good.
Yeah, the content
I
is
definitely
interesting, no
learned
doubt.
something, and it could have had that content without the sarcasm, because it almost felt in a way sometimes belittling India, and I didn't appreciate that. Yeah.
Same.
All right. Yeah, same. Interesting. So that's our reaction. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, give me your like and give me your subscribe. And as always, we love you and bye-bye.
Bye.